Hello, everybody. Welcome to Saturday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, production of SEC Extra at D1Baseball.com. Here to take you through the results of Friday's action around the SEC and get you ready for Saturday's games on the slate. But first, I have to let you know that this episode of Weekend Waypoints, our Saturday sponsor, is Plains Coffee Company. A lot of good things to love about Plains Coffee Company. For one, I love that it's a husband and wife team. Roasting coffee beans in the heart of SEC country. It doesn't get any more family-run small business than that. Also, you get 10% off on your order if you use the code baseball at plainscoffee.com, and free shipping on that order. So 10% off plus free shipping. I mean, that's a heck of a deal when you consider that a lot of times promo codes like that are usually just knocking off whatever the shipping cost is, which is fine, but it's even better when you get free shipping and you get the 10% off. And then finally, they only roast your order when you order it. So those beans have not been sitting on a shelf for God knows how long. You order it, they roast it, they ship out the next day. So your beans are as fresh as they could possibly be once they arrive on your doorstep. So support the folks who support us. It's what I've been asking you since we brought Plains Coffee on as a sponsor. Visit plainscoffee.com. Use the code baseball for 10% off your order. Well, how do we enjoy the baseball, folks? I know where I was on Friday. Heck of a game with Mizzou and Florida. An upset win for Mizzou over Florida. Really well pitched game for Mizzou. I'm not going to lie to you and say it was the prettiest baseball I've ever seen, but effective win for Mizzou there, and a win they kind of had to have to feel good about their direction here. So let's jump right into it with the game of the day first off. And I'm going with Vanderbilt 8, LSU 6, and I'll pull up the box score here as a little bit of a visual aid, if you will. There we go. You can see here from the line score, LSU 6-5 lead going into the late innings as I swat a mosquito out of the room here. It's that time of year, folks. The mosquitoes are coming back. 6-5 lead for LSU. Vanderbilt gets 2 in the 8th on a Jaden Davis 2-run home run to give them the lead. They tack on an insurance run in the 9th, as you see there, to go up 8-6. For two teams that really have kind of struggled at times to stack runs together, they scored 16 total runs 2 nights ago. They scored 14 total runs last night, so they're actually swinging it pretty well. Of course, the flip side of that is the starting pitching has not been as good as it often has been for these teams, and they were hoping it would be even go down here. I mean, you see Bryce Cunningham goes 4 1/3, gives up 5 runs, and then if you flip over to the LSU side of the ledger here, Gage Jump, 5 runs, 4 earned in 5 1/3 innings. Not terrible outings for either. It wasn't a bunch of walks or anything like that, but it just goes to show that the SEC is tough on starting pitchers for sure, even with offenses that haven't always been the most powerful. As you see here with Ackenhausen getting the loss, another bullpen L for LSU, and it was tough because, to flip back over to Vanderbilt, you look at what their bullpen did, and okay, Cyber gives up a run, but then McIlvain comes in and absolutely slams the door. And so it's tough, a situation where the LSU bullpen can't afford to give up anything, lest it give up the lead. That's a tough situation, but it is another bullpen loss there for LSU in a SEC season so far where they have had too many of those in LSU's opinion, I'm sure. So a good win for Vanderbilt there. Gets the series 1-1. We've got a finale today. Looking forward to that. Feels big for both teams. Obviously, more so for LSU. They're looking to win the series and start to move back in the right direction after, maybe hitting rock bottom with that midweek loss against Southern this past week after getting swept over the weekend by Arkansas. So that's big. But for Vanderbilt, I think there's something to be said for, hey, elite teams in the SEC can go on the road, as tough as it is, and win series against good teams. Now, you're not going to do that every weekend unless you're, 2022 Tennessee or 2021 Arkansas. But even those teams, lost series. So, but if you're an elite team in the SEC, you're going to get some of these series, and this is an opportunity where an LSU team that's clearly vulnerable right now can get got. So if you're Vanderbilt, you're looking to get that done today in the finale of the series. Making sure I don't have any sort of other notes here. The only other thing I was going to say about Ethan McIlvain is that, he's kind of come around. It was a slow start for him, but he started to figure it out. It reminds me a little bit of Luke McNeely for Florida, where it was a guy that, just out of the gate wasn't quite as sharp as you maybe thought he would be. But again, freshman, and has slowly but surely started to clearly be more comfortable, be more confident, and started to figure some things out. Luke McNeely for Florida, kind of the same way. So Ethan McIlvain, for a Vanderbilt bullpen that needs more weapons like him with high octane stuff, guys who can miss bats, et cetera, et cetera, he's a sight for sore eyes. So a big news there for Vanderbilt and in the outing that Ethan McIlvain had. All right, let's talk player of the day here. As always, we'll go through the list of candidates and use those as kind of jumping off points to talk about some of the various happenings around the SEC on Friday. Tommy White for LSU, obviously in a losing effort there, 2 for 4 with 2 home runs, 3 runs batted in. Obviously, if LSU is going to get going, he's going to have to be the centerpiece of it. Good day for Ashton Larson, who started to get some more playing time in that Arkansas series. Maybe he's someone that LSU has found that maybe they can trust a little more as the season goes on. He went 3 for 4 with a home run of his own. Jaden Davis, 2 for 4 with a home run, 4 RBIs. We mentioned the clutchness of that home run, an 8th inning home run to give Vanderbilt the lead on the road. That's big. Calvin Hewitt in the same game, 3 for 3, 2 stolen bases. A big day there for him. Blake Burke, 3 for 4 with a double and a walk in a losing effort against Auburn. And that game was wild. I don't have the box score pulled up. I should have, though. Neither starting pitcher, Dylan Watts or AJ Causey, got through 2 innings. And the score was 8-5 or something after the first inning or after the second inning. And then ended, I think, 9-5 in favor of Auburn. So weird game, a bunch of runs in the first 2 innings, and the bullpens did a pretty doggone good job the rest of the way. But so just wild there. But a game that Auburn has to feel good about getting. Now you're 1 game away from winning your first SEC series. It's against a good team in Tennessee. If you're Tennessee, the outing for Causey is probably a cause, no pun intended, for concern. It just hasn't gone well for him in SEC play necessarily, as good as he was in non-conference play. It's been a little jarring. I mean, you knew that he'd come back to earth a little, right? When you go into SEC play, you're not going to get through as unscathed as he had in non-conference play, but he's really backslid, and so that's a little bit alarming there, especially in a world where AJ Russell's health moving forward is a little bit of a question mark, right? And Drew Beam hasn't quite been Drew Beam, right? So they're just going to need Causey to figure something out as time goes on. I don't know. You're already having to fill an extra spot in the rotation. Last week, Sechrist did a great job, but you probably can't bank on something like that every week. So they're already plugging holes in the rotation, are the Volunteers. So I'm not sure how much they can afford to look for other options necessarily right away for Causey. So it might just be a situation where they're going to keep throwing him out there and trust that it's going to get better. We'll obviously have to see about that. But in the win for Auburn, just a big win there to battle through, again, not getting much from a starter. And it was probably always going to be a little bit of an opener situation with Dylan Watts making his first start of the season. But you were obviously looking for a little more quality than what you got from him. Carson Myers came on in relief and threw the ball really well. That probably takes him out of the mix of starting a game this weekend. But it does make you wonder if he's a guy who, okay, we look ahead to next weekend and maybe we run Carson Myers back out there as a starter. It feels like Auburn's kind of at the point where it's just going to try to play a hot hand, cycle through guys that they know that can theoretically get the job done. Maybe Carson Myers is next in line there. Jace Laviolette for Texas A&M. I highlight him just because it was one of those games where, he just went 1 for 3 with a double, but walked 3 times. Just kind of goes to show how even if you're working around him because you walked him 3 times, the rest of the lineup can get you. A&M's offense did a good job against South Carolina, did a good job against Eli Jones, got Eli Jones knocked out of the game relatively early, which is something that hadn't happened to Eli Jones the first few starts of SEC play. So a good job by Texas A&M's lineup collectively. Jace Laviolette, a big part of that. Andrew Fisher for Ole Miss, 2 for 4 with 2 home runs in a losing effort against Arkansas. Arkansas didn't have really any big individual offensive star in an 8-3 win, but I highlight them here because they got 9 hits by 8 players. I do think you can look and critique Arkansas's offense and say, look, they are a little bit vulnerable if another team is able to put up runs. They're not really built to have these big comebacks in terms of number of runs in a short period of time. However, as I said coming out of last weekend, I do think one of the things they have going for them is they have a lot of guys they trust to get something done for them. And I compare it to yesterday watching Florida's lineup against Mizzou, and Mizzou pitching had a good day, but you look at the bottom half of that lineup, and you're looking at guys who are really scuffling, like Luke Heyman, though he did have a home run yesterday. Guys who are really scuffling, like Luke Heyman, or guys whose bats are just light in general, right? Jalen Guy and Tanner Garrison and Michael Robertson, Dale Thomas. So Florida's lineup, you feel like you can pitch to if you get to the second half of it, and then if the first half of the lineup has a tough day, as they did on Friday, you can really pitch to Florida's lineup, and they've kind of been scuffling of late for largely that reason. But with Arkansas, you don't get that same kind of break. It feels like whoever's in their 9 spot can do something just as much as whoever's in their 3 spot. They may not have that star power, there's no Heston Kjerstad in this lineup. However, they do have a lot of guys who can get a lot done. So 9 hits by 8 players, I thought was a good encapsulation of what this Arkansas lineup is and how it succeeds as much as it does without having a ton of star power. My player of the day, though, is Ike Irish of Auburn, just for a couple things. One is that, he had a good day, 3 for 4 with a home run and a stolen base. Noted speed demon and stolen base specialist Ike Irish there with a swipe. But in the bigger picture, it's just that he's continued to be so solid for them. And SEC play has not started the way Auburn would have hoped generally, but Ike Irish has been excellent from start to finish. He's been a centerpiece, a foundational piece, whatever you want to call it. He's been every bit as good as they knew he could be because of what he did last year as a freshman. So player of the day is Ike Irish after a 3 for 4 game and helping Auburn to get a big, big, big win over Tennessee to start that series. Okay, let's talk pitcher of the day. I am going to start with Ethan McIlvain. I'm trying to fold in some relievers into the pitcher of the day thing. One is because I do want to highlight really good relief outings, and two, I'm going to be honest with you, is just because the lineups are so good in this league. And the ball is jumping, it's whether you think the ball is hot or what have you. There's a lot of offense. So finding starting pitchers that have like particularly notable outings is a tough chore on a weekend day. So going to try to fold in some of the relievers into this pitcher of the day mix. So Ethan McIlvain, one of them, I mentioned him earlier, 3 1/3 innings pitched with two hits, no runs scored. Trey Pusser for Kentucky, 7 innings pitched, 6 hits, 2 runs in a win against Alabama. We'll talk more about Kentucky here in just a minute and what they're doing and how impressive it is. But another start for Trey Pusser where, look, he didn't start the year in the rotation. He jumped in when Travis Smith came out, but he's been every bit as good and then some as Kentucky really could have hoped for there. So, impressive stuff there again, and against a good Alabama lineup, he stifled them. Cal Steven against Georgia. Really impressive stuff to hold Georgia to 1 run, even on the road. That's a Georgia offense that can just, typically you think they're going to run into at least a couple baseballs and hit solo homers and score a couple runs, but they held them to 1. Cal Steven was a big part of that. 6 2/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. Cam Schulke good in relief in that one as well. So just a good day overall for Mississippi State to get that win. And do it in the fashion they did, I think is particularly impressive. Ryan Prager of A&M in that win, the win Friday, 6 1/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 runs, no walks, and 12 strikeouts of South Carolina batters for Ryan Prager. Another good step forward. Again, kind of confirming, what we've all thought, which is that, hey, this is it's a pitching staff that's a lot better. It's a pitching staff that's taken a step forward. Ryan Prager, obviously a big part of that. Okay, game of the day, Saturday. We'll do this to wrap up here. I'm going Bama at Kentucky. There are some other, LSU Vanderbilt's a good rubber match. That's going to be really intriguing. but I'm fascinated by Alabama at Kentucky. First off, a moment of appreciation for Kentucky baseball. They are the first team. This is per the SEC. I passed it along, had it passed along to me uh, via Ben Beatty of the SEC office. Kentucky is the first team to start 9-1 in SEC play in back-to-back seasons in 32 years. That's impressive, and goes to show. Look, people still want to nitpick what Kentucky's doing, and okay, like let's see them win the series against Alabama, right? I mean, that's a good first step, but they've they've raised the floor of this program to where they're just beating teams at home and beating teams they should beat. And that's a huge first step when we live in a world where Florida has dropped a bunch of midweek games. LSU lost to Southern, right? Both of the Mississippi teams have dropped midweek games that you wouldn't think they would. Kentucky hasn't, outside of losing 2 games to Kennesaw State, which, oh, by the way, is a pretty good team. And I know in our midseason field of 64 update that the guys did earlier or last week, I should say, Kennesaw State was a regional team. So like, that's not even a bad series loss necessarily, but outside of those two games there, Kentucky just hasn't taken losses at home or against teams that you think they should beat on paper. And that's impressive stuff. And that's how you end up hosting again. And don't look now, but at 9-1, I mean, Kentucky really only needs 7 wins, probably SEC wins down the stretch over the next 6 2/3 weeks to be right back in position to host a regional, just like they did last year. So impressive stuff for the Wildcats. Can't say enough there. But a good pitching matchup today. Greg Ferrone for Alabama against Dom Nyman for Kentucky. Really good matchup of 2 guys that have been, I don't mean to be offensive about it, but pleasant surprises, just because pleasant surprises kind of implies that I thought they weren't going to be particularly good. But, Greg Ferrone wasn't in the rotation to start the season. He jumped in when Riley Quick got injured, but he's been steady as a rock for those guys, which has been very important for Alabama, as Ben Hess hasn't quite been as good as anticipated or hoped. And then Dom Nyman has been in the rotation since the opening weekend, but a Central Connecticut State transfer, that's a small D1 school. He won a lot of games there. He had really good numbers, but how well does that translate to the SEC? And then he pitches well in non-conference, and you're like, okay, well, let's see him against SEC play. And he's not perfect. He's not out there dazzling opposing batters. That's not who he is, really. But he's been extremely solid for them in his SEC starts. So we'll see him today against Greg Ferrone in Alabama. A big one there because Alabama, again, you don't want to get swept. So you need to steal a win at some point this weekend. And Ferrone on the mound, you feel fairly confident that he's going to give you a chance to win. You just got to obviously make it happen against a Kentucky team that, in addition to clearly being good, also just feels like the vibes are really good for this Kentucky team. Like sometimes the team just gets wind at its back, and that feels like what's happening with Kentucky right now, where they've got some wind at their back. They're feeling good. They're making a push. And that can be hard to counteract when you've got a team that's feeling it that way. Before we wrap up here, Jeremy Scott checking in just in the nick of time on Facebook. Roll Tide, tough loss last night. Playing in the Final Four tonight. Yeah, Alabama men's basketball in the Final Four tonight. Good luck to the Crimson Tide men. From my standpoint, mostly so that we get a good basketball game. There's not a ton of confidence that's going to be the case. I'm hoping that Alabama can, chuck in about, 25 3-pointers and really make this an interesting game. And I'd like to see UConn get pushed. So that'll be interesting. I will be watching that as well, or perhaps listening to it just based on the timing, listening to it as I head back from the Mizzou game to where I'm staying here. So that might be the case as well. But either way, I'll have one eye or one ear on the Alabama basketball game this evening. All right, folks, that is it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints. I appreciate you joining me once again. Please support Plains Coffee Company if you are a coffee drinker or a tea drinker. By the way, they've got tea options as well. Support the people who support us. Go to plainscoffee.com. You'll get free shipping on your order. You can get 10% off if you use the code BASEBALL at checkout. And they do not roast your coffee beans until you order them. They are as fresh as they could possibly be when they arrive on your doorstep. Go to plainscoffee.com to place your order. I and Plains Coffee would greatly appreciate that. Enjoy the baseball today, everyone. I will talk to you again tomorrow morning.